But my beats, they are hard.
BCSN Sports Wrap. Brian Fulford and AD Drew here, and we are excited to bring you another fantasy basketball tournament, very similar to what you're already out there participating and interacting with us on. And that's, obviously you've been interacting with us on our fantasy men's basketball tournament, and we appreciate all of the athletic departments, the coaches, the players, the alumni, the basketball fans, the HBCU community that's been participating in this contest. And we're coming down to the final four teams going into this last weekend. So it's been a really good week. And, it's kept us busy as we all are going through these much restricted quarantine mode, or at least we should be. And so it's been good to kind of see the fan bases rally. And so we'll kind of see what happens with the Final Four and then the national championship, or I guess we'll say the fantasy championship. But we didn't want to leave out the ladies. So while we were letting the men's tournament happen, our selection committee chaired by AD Drew was working on the women's tournament. And again, this is the HBCU Fantasy Women's Basketball Tournament that we're going to be bringing to you. And again, the key word here, fantasy. These teams advance based on you and your voting. That's it. There's no simulated games. There's no nothing. There's no darts on the wall. We're not even playing video games for this. This is just all fan voting and participation. So that's how these teams advance. But we've done all the research for you. We're going to put it up on our website, mybcsn.net /vote, and we'll have that available for you. We'll tell you the exact website here shortly, and you will be able to go and vote for the top 32 women's basketball teams. And so again, just to refresh your memory, and AD will explain this a little bit, just quickly, he'll kind of describe the process that went into getting all of these teams, these 32 teams together. And we used the Massey rating system, very similar to what we did with the men's tournament. So AD, briefly, or as quick as you can, let the people know what went into the process of coming up with the 32 women's teams.
Well, it was a similar process to what we did with the men's team, Brian. There's the MasseyRatings.com was our starting point. Every team in the nation who plays basketball has a Massey rating. That takes in certain things as wins, losses, strength of schedule, offense, defense, and a few other statistics, kind of similar to RPI and some of the other numbers that you always hear. But Massey is the only system right now that ranks Division I teams, Division II teams, NAIA Division I, NAIA Division II. If you even want to go into it, they rank Division III teams, junior college teams, so forth and so on down the line. So this was one set of numbers that we could find that was consistent across the board. So we pulled those numbers. We did our own calculations and adjustments based upon divisions and classification, whether you're NAIA or NCAA, whether you were Division I or Division II. So we did some adjustments based upon those numbers. Won't get into the math. If you want to know the math, you can contact me at BCSN Drew, and I would be more than happy to send you out the formula that we use. But based upon that, we were able to come up with the 32, what we felt were the 32 best teams in the nation. We came up with a list of about 42, 44 teams initially. Then we cut it down to the 32. And Brian, you know we had to include the women, because if we did not include the women, it would have been a Title IX violation for the BCSN, and we didn't want to get put on probation by our fans.
Right, sure. Whatever you say about that Title IX stuff. Now, look, hey, we were on quarantine. We just needed something to do. And, hey, look, there are a lot of good teams, a lot of good programs, a lot of good players. There were just some great seasons in the women's game, and we just felt like those seasons needed to be recognized, acknowledged. And even though these ladies can't actually play it out on the court, you know, at least we'll get a chance to maybe talk about them, or you at home will get a chance to talk about them, read a little bit about them, and then place your votes accordingly. What I did notice, AD, was interesting. We've got a nice mix of the 20 of the 32 teams. I believe we have 7 teams whose season was scheduled to go on into the Division II or the NAIA playoffs, but they were cut short. And we probably would have only had, well, I don't know. Yeah, no, we probably would have only had 2 women's teams from Division I, one from the MEAC, one from the SWAC. I think the Ohio Valley team, Tennessee State, I don't think they're in the tournament, actually, one of the 32 teams. So I'm spoiler alert there. Sorry about that. And then I think the other team, Hampton, who is one of our teams, I think they were eliminated in the Big South tournament somewhere in the first rounds. I don't think they made it to the championship like the men did.
I believe they lost in the second round.
Okay, so we definitely would have only had a MEAC and a SWAC representative. So 9 or 10, maybe 11 of these teams are all worthy of postseason play. And so probably more teams on the women's side than the men's side. So I found that.
And who knows, we might have gotten a team into the women's NIT also.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point too. So that's why I said, you know, we probably would have had 11, you know, who knows, 10 to 11 teams. Easily a couple of runner-ups from out of the MEAC and the SWAC would have had an opportunity to play in the NIT.
Probably whoever would have lost if Jackson State and Texas Southern would have made it to the SWAC finals, the loser probably goes on to the women's NIT. Probably the same thing with Bethune, where Bethune had lost in the first round of the MEAC tournament. They were probably going to wind up in the women's NIT, where the MEAC winner was going to get the automatic bid to the NCAA. So we're probably looking at, you said we had 7 who were in, 2 more guaranteed. We probably would have gotten 10 or 11 teams just based on those numbers right there, Brian.
Yeah, good point. So let's move into the next phase of this, which very similar to the men's fantasy tournament or the fantasy men's tournament. We have 32 teams playing in 4 regions. The 4 regions have 8 teams in them. We come out with a region winner, and they go to the Final Four. And AD did a great job. We'll tell you the cities and everything shortly. But first, we want to recognize the names of our 4 regions because they have a little bit of significance. And we went with coaches. Very similar to what we did in the men's tournament. We're talking about some of the best coaches or the biggest names in women's HBCU basketball. What's interesting about this list, we have 3 active coaches. I mean, coaches who are still on the sideline right now. Like they coached this past season, and once we come out of this COVID-19 pandemic that we're in, and Lord willing, we have another season next year, they will be on the sideline next year. So, AD, why don't you tell us?
And one of them just recently retired also. He's been retired less than 5 years.
Right. So let's reveal the names. We have the C. Vivian Stringer bracket, the Bo Browder bracket. I guess we should call them regions. The Robert Skinner region. So again, C. Vivian Stringer region, Bo Browder region, Robert Skinner region, and Lonnie Bartley region. AD, why don't you tell us about these coaches?
We'll start off with retired coach, Coach Bartley, Lonnie Bartley, Fort Valley State University. He had 2 stints there at Fort Valley. He was there from 84 to 2013. So he was there for 19 years at that point in time, well, 20 years at that point in time. And then he came back and did 3 additional years from 15 to 17, 15, 16, and then 16, 17. So 2 additional years. During that time at Fort Valley, he went 652 and 258, multiple SIAC championships, multiple Division II tournament appearances during his tenure there at Fort Valley State. And he was a lifer at Fort Valley State. His cross-state rival, Robert Skinner, fast approaching 600 victories. Well, I say fast. He's only been around for 40 years, Brian. He's only been coaching at Albany State for 40 years. 582 and 491 during those 40 years at Albany State. He has SIAC championships to his credit, and he also has Division II tournament appearances to his credit also. One coach who we just saw not too long ago and had a chance to bump elbows with, Bo Browder, down at Xavier University. 448 victories, 187 losses, and I believe he's been there for 31 years, if my math does me correctly there, Brian. And he's fast approaching 500 victories there at Xavier University. And special note, Brian, I have actually seen all 3 of these coaches coach their teams multiple times. I've actually been in the gym with these 3 coaches while they've been coaching. So that's I guess I should be honored. And when I've been in the gym with these folks, I didn't realize what they stood at on the all-times wins list. But these are 3 of the top people on the all-times win list.
Look at you, AD, standing next to legends. That's what you do. That's what you do, man.
And that's what we do at the BCSN. And of course, these are all my pre-BCSN days. But Coach Bartley, to my knowledge and to the records that I am able to pull out, is the winningest HBCU women's head coach that we have, with all 652 of his victories being at Fort Valley State. I said, based upon the research that I'm able to do, because as women's teams started becoming more and more prevalent, before that, record keeping was poor with women's teams. They weren't even covered by their school newspapers, their campus newspapers. Did not have scorekeepers, did not have bookkeepers, so records weren't turned into the NCAA or NIT or whatever division that they were playing. So some of these coaches that we've just mentioned may actually have more victories than they're given credit for, Brian. Which brings us to our 4th coach, C. Vivian Stringer. We all know her from her championships that she's won as recently as a few years ago over at Rutgers. She was at Iowa before she was at Rutgers. But did you know that she spent 11 years coaching at Cheney State University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I had no idea. No idea.
She has, to her credit, she has 1,041 victories, 421 losses. She is the winningest women's coach of all time, and she is one of the top coaches in all-time victories, male or female. But her first 251 victories came at Cheney State. So we're going to give her that fourth bracket. We're going to honor her because she got her start in HBCU basketball and because of the fact that she is the winningest coach in women's basketball in history. And almost a quarter of her victories were at an HBCU.
All right, well said. So that's a little bit of the background on our 4 regions that we came up with, and now our 4 number 1 seeds. And of course, just like any tournament, you've got 4 number 1 seeds going into 4 different regions. These are the teams, not only with I'm not going to say they all have the highest rating, but they are the highest rated with the best resume. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. The best resume based on not only their record and their ratings and what they did during this season. So our number 1 overall seed, and this one was probably close, but our number 1 overall seed, and we're putting them in the C. Vivian Stringer region, the Bethune-Cookman Wildcats. The Wildcats of the MEAC were 23-6 on the regular season. They had a 15-1 conference record. What's interesting about that 15-1, they lost their very first conference game of the season. I don't remember if it was to Norfolk State or A&T. It was one of those 2 teams. And then they won 15 in a row. And so Bethune-Cookman, first in the MEAC, they won the regular season title. Unfortunately, though, the story didn't, I guess, fortunately/unfortunately, the unfortunate part is they lost the very first game of the MEAC tournament to Maryland Eastern Shore in the MEAC quarterfinals, right? The fortunate part of that game really doesn't count because the tournament got suspended right after that due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so technically, Bethune-Cookman ended up winning the MEAC tournament. Now, so I'm sure the MEAC will look into that in the future, but who knew this might be a scenario where all of a sudden, you'd have no opportunity to replay or continue playing the tournament. So Bethune-Cookman, the number 1 overall seed, winner of the MEAC record 23-6. The second overall number 1 seed going into the Bo Browder region, Texas Southern. And the Texas Southern Tigers head coach, Cynthia Cooper-Dyke, of course, the Hall of Famer, Cynthia Cooper-Dyke. They were 20-10 on the regular season, 14-4 in the conference. They finished second in the SWAC during the regular season. They won 7 of their last 8 games. They had advanced to the SWAC semifinals, and of course, that's where the SWAC tournament ended. So we don't know, you never know kind of what would have happened, but Texas Southern comes in as the number 2 overall seed. The number 3 overall seed, the team that actually was finished the regular season as the SWAC champions, that would be the Jackson State Tigers. And Jackson State with a record of 19-10, 16-2 in the conference. Second-year coach Tamika Reed. This team really talk about a tale of 2 seasons. Went on a 12-0 conference run to start the season. They actually had won 1 game before that, so they really had like a 13-game winning streak at one point in the season. So really a great season. It was a great start for Jackson State. And of course, when you go 12-0, they finished 16-2, an outstanding season and plenty of postseason accolades and awards for Jackson State. And they are a number 1 seed in the Robert Skinner region. Our last number 1 overall seed, or our number 1 seed rather, Norfolk State Spartans. They're going in the Lonnie Bartley region. And Norfolk State with a record of 19-11, 12-4 in the MEAC. They were actually tied for second in the conference. Just trying to quickly look. Oh, they were tied for second with Morgan State.
Yes.
Morgan State, but Norfolk State definitely well deserving. They had won 7 of their last 10 games down the stretch of the season. Head coach Larry Vickers in his 5th season leading the Spartans, who had a very good season, and probably, with the loss to Bethune-Cookman, would have been a favorite probably to advance to the tournament, if they could avoid the pitfall or a similar pitfall that fell to Bethune-Cookman. So that's our 4 teams: Bethune-Cookman, Texas Southern, Jackson State, and Norfolk State. AD, your comments on the the 4 number 1 seeds?
Well, 2 of those seeds, had some big non-conference victories. First, Norfolk State, they had some big non-conference victories against Georgia Southern, Charleston Southern, and Hampton. And Hampton did make the tournament. We'll see where Hampton ranks in the tournament in a few moments, but that was a big victory that they had over a good Hampton team. Texas Southern, and I think Texas Southern's out-of-conference resume is what boasted them up to the number 2 overall of the number 1s instead of Jackson State, who actually won the SWAC, because they had big wins against Hawaii, Texas, and Tulane out of conference, whereas Jackson State's only big victory out of conference was to Louisiana Lafayette. So I think that was the big thing that made Texas Southern the number 2 overall versus Jackson State.
All right, and so when we come back, we'll begin to reveal the regions for you, and we'll tell you the other 7 teams that'll be in the region with our number 1 seeds. Just to give you an idea of the schedule of games or the voting for these, it'll be a very similar format to what we had for the men. Round 1 voting will take place from Sunday until that's Sunday, April 5th, until Wednesday at noon. So that is, I believe that's Wednesday the 8th, April 8th. So that'll end at noon. And then after round 1, probably about an hour later, round 2 voting will open up. And that'll go from Wednesday all the way until Friday at noon. So that'll be Friday, April 10th is when round 2 will end. We'll go to the regional finals from over the weekend, from Friday until Sunday at noon. That'll be Sunday, April 12th is when that voting will end. And then we'll go to the Final 4 right after that on Sunday, probably about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock or so. And that'll last until Tuesday at noon. That'll be Tuesday, April 14th. And then, of course, after the Final 4, we vote on the champion from Tuesday to Thursday. So the women's tournament will run a similar schedule as the men's tournament did. The voting, you will be able to go and vote at least once a day. So don't just think if you vote one time, that's it. No, make sure to go log in a second day, or the next day rather, and vote. And really, if you do the math, you might even be able to get in 3 days. I don't really know how that'll work, but you can go try to vote. You can share the web link, of course, if you're following us on social media at MyBCSN1 on Instagram, Twitter, and on Facebook. We've been posting notifications about the men's tournament, but we'll do so as well for the women. And the web address for the women's tournament will be mybcsn.net/votewbb/. So again, that's mybcsn.net/votewbb. And so a little bit different from the men's tournament, but we give the women their own little URL there, so that way we can go directly to the women's tournament and vote. All right, So at this point, we'll move forward, and when we come back, you'll see us reveal the C. Vivian Stringer region where the #1 overall seed is Bethune-Cookman. All right? I'm Bryan Fulford. That's AD Drew. We'll be back in just a moment.
You stay hard.